And another option, if you don't like the visual representation I showed you on the end of the last video, you could find something like this here on Engineering Toolbox and just have it in list format. So 1/8 of an inch equals 0.125, and then they break it out into sixteenths down here and even 30 seconds, which we definitely will not get into. And if you recreated this, in fact, if I were to recreate this, I would probably insert the sixteenths in between these, maybe offset them a little bit, and then put the numbers, maybe even put the 1/8 of an inch and their decimal equivalents bigger than the 16th of an inch. But if you did that one time inside of Adobe Illustrator, save that out, you'd have it forever, and just the art, the exercise of doing it would be a big learning lesson. So going back to our example, we know that this equals 3 1/4, which aka is 3 space 1/4, or 1/4. The 9 is very easy. Divided by 2 equals 4 1/2. And if we looked at the chart, we would see that the 0.5 is right in the middle, also known as 4 1/2. Now let's just imagine, for example, that our measurement came out to 3 1/8 past the half, which if we look, in detail at our zoom or our close-up, we'd see that that is 3 5/8. Could really zoom in on the ruler, and the 3 was here and the 4 was over here. We came out to right there, which this one helps us out and tells us that that's 5/8. So how would we figure that out? Well, we would say, okay, the distance that we had was 3 5/8. We need half of that on each side. So again, we start with the fraction. First, clear this out. 5 divided by 8. And we could confirm that on our decimal equivalent, but that comes out to 0.625. Add back in the whole number, the 3. So that's 3.625, or 3 5/8, divided by 2 equals 1.8125. Now here's where we definitely want that chart for help. So we scan through the numbers till we find that. 0.8125 is 13/16 of an inch. So here it's very easy to find because it's written out. But how do we find that when it's not written out? First, what you need to do is definitely know how many divisions your ruler has on it. Like I said, the most common you'll find is 1/16 of an inch. Every now and then you find a ruler that from 0 to 1 is divided into 30 seconds, and then everything from there on is a 1/16. But either way, just be familiar with what those lines are. The most cumbersome and foolproof way, and it's especially cumbersome with a big number like 13/16, is you just start here and you say, well, that's 1/16, 2, 3, and you get up to 13. Eventually, you'll learn some shortcuts, like that 1/2 is the same as saying 8/16, so you can start counting from there with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And you may even get to the point where you're able to do that with, quarter numbers or whatever, and say, well, 3/4 is the same as 12/16, so then one more would be 13/16. Everything that I've told you so far works great if the measurement, your initial measurement that you need to cut in half, either comes out, full, a half, a quarter, to the nearest eighth. If it comes out to a 1/16 or even between 1/16, here's what I recommend you do, is just write down what the extra is to the nearest 1/16. We're going to use a little bit of a fudge factor here. So let's say that your measurement came out right here at 3/16. Now you know what 3/16 is, so you may be tempted to say, no, I'm just going to use that. I'm comfortable with 3/16. Well, when you divide 16ths by 2, you're going to come out with 30 seconds, which can just be really tough to find on the ruler. So what I would say you do is you just go to the nearest, whatever it is, and in this case I'm going to use 3/16 in the example. Go to the nearest eighth. and just write down somewhere, in big on a piece of scrap paper, wrote, you know, my measurement equals 8 3/16, but I'm using 8 1/8. Then go to your ruler, 1 divided by 8 plus the 8 inches. There's our 8 1/8 of an inch. Divide that by 2. We get 4. We look this up. That comes out to 4 1/16. Then we just continue on to our notes that came out to 4 1/16. But then we look back on our note and we say, okay, yeah, I rounded down. So all that means is you're going to take half of that distance and add it back in. But like I said, we're not going to get overly technical about this. So we're going to find 4 1/16, and we're just going to add half of that 16th that we omitted. So here is 4 1/16. So when we make our mark, we're just going to make it right in between the next number. And that's as close as you ever need to come for something like this. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, okay, but what if it comes out to 8 3/16 and about halfway to the next number? Then what do I do? Almost the same exact thing, just round down to the nearest quarter, do your math, divide it by 2, you'd still come out to 4 1/16, and then when you go over to the 16th, 4 1/16, then just add a tiny bit more than the halfway in between. That's way more than accurate enough. Now, before we move away from this topic and finish that up, let me just show you, in case you want to delve into more information on the ruler or just hear somebody else's explanation, I'll show you this website real quick. So you can just go right to this website or Google that, and that's where I got some of the images from. But just goes into a little bit more detail in written form. Okay, so now that we have that information that we need to go 3 1/4 from the sides and 4 1/2 from the bottom, assuming we want to center this, now how do we actually deal with that? Well, what we're going to do is move our print from the board and put our ruler up here. Okay, and we say we need from the, well, actually I'm going to tell you from the bottom first. We need 4 1/2, and then what I'm likely to do, because I don't want any more pencil marks on here than I need to, is I'm going to get an idea of where 4 1/2 starts. I'm not going to mark it yet, but that's just going to help me keep from making my board nasty. So try to give you the best visual representation I can here. I'm going to just simply move this down here, get my 0 mark where it should be, and I'm going to go up to 4 1/2, and I'm just going to take like a nice clean piece of tape, and I'm going to set it right about at that 4-inch mark. So let's make that different color to represent a piece of tape. Now don't jam it on there or make a mess with it or anything. It's just there lightly to help us make our second measurements. From the sides, I need to measure in 3 1/4. And what this little piece of tape did was it stopped me from making the mark down here where I'd have to later erase it. So I'm just going to go up slightly above the piece of tape, maybe 1/4, 1/2 inch. You don't want to go too far from it. And then we want to measure out our 3 1/4. When you're making a measurement like this, you need 2 reference points, and you need to make sure that your ruler is straight in alignment with the bottom of this. If your ruler is at a slight angle, it throws your entire measurement off. Maybe you know that from trigonometry, but it doesn't matter. Just trust me, that will throw your measurement off. So it needs to be perfectly parallel to the bottom of the board. And then you're going to go into your 3 1/4 mark, and you're going to keep in mind the fact that you're going to be making a mark in a line here, but you don't want to have to go back in and try to erase that, especially if you're using spray mount, because you will end up with an awful mess trying to erase right at the edge where the line meets your piece of paper. The little trick that I've learned is to go just a little bit bigger than the measurement that you need, how much bigger? You're going to kind of have to figure this out for yourself, but it's like roughly the thickness of a pencil mark. So if this is 3 1/4, maybe it's, right about there. But you're going to take a very sharp pencil, and you're not going to jam into this or anything. And you're just going to make a pencil mark. In this case, you're going to go to where your mark is that you want, 3 1/4, and you go just a little bit more. And you make just a little tick mark. And luckily, you can see on these blackboards a pencil mark fairly good. You want to give yourself another tick mark somewhere up here. No need to go any higher than the piece of paper, and no need to try to go even the exact distance of the print that you're going to put on here. I like to just have the print near the side, move the ruler up. That's probably good right there because I'm going to be drawing from the bottom. And then I repeat that same process of going to the 3 1/4 slightly over mark. And then what we want to do is take our ruler and align it to this mark and draw a line between them. Come in with your ruler. It helps to kind of have your pencil handy where you can kind of just put it on the dot here and then put it on the dot here. Move it up nice and close so that you know you'll be drawing right exactly where you want to. And then now you're going to go to the bottom and measure up, what was it, 4 1/2 plus just a little bit. And you have this line here to help you so that you know you don't need to measure way out here. So make a tick mark there. Put your work down below to kind of help you figure out that a tick mark about right here and about right here should be plenty. Get rid of that piece of tape, and now you've got these two marks, and notice they don't come together, but that doesn't matter. Now what you're going to do is take your piece that you're going to mount, and you're going to use one of the spray adhesive methods that I'll show you in the upcoming video, and then you're going to get the adhesive on the back of this. And it sometimes helps to have another person helping you, because what you want to do is not let this touch down, especially if you're using spray adhesive. It's the hardest one to work with. And you want to get it so that this paper just barely, remember we made them just a little bit in further than they needed to be. So if we cover them, that's going to put our paper back exactly where it should be. And we've covered up our marks. Perfection. And let me make sure I adequately addressed these questions here. So what is greater, 3/8 or 5/16? Pause and see if you can figure that out both intuitively, looking at the ruler, and what's the best way to check for sure? The calculator, right? So you just simply go 3/8. It's got to be smaller, right? Because 3 and 8 are smaller than 5 and 16, but nope, doesn't work that way. 3 divided by 8, you have 3 parts of 8, 3/7/5, or 5 parts of 16. That number is smaller. So which is greater? 3/8. Now I can tell you for sure I'm not going to use these same exact numbers on the quiz, but as long as you get it in theory. And then here, if your black map board is 20 inches wide and your centered print is 12 inches wide, how much space will be on each side? Well, that's basically what we spent the last 20 some minutes going over. So hopefully you can answer that question now. If not, go back, look at the videos with these numbers in mind instead of what I used in the video, which was 15 and 8.5. And in the next video, I'll try making my first college video with my camera to show you how this will actually work on the table with the map boards, with the mounting adhesive, and so on.